Hey, so you're a Catholic and you find Mass really boring. I've been there, I've done that. So there's a couple of objections that I have to Mass on the right-hand side and a couple of benefits that I've written down. But before we go into them and the details of these six points, I want to share with you that it is possible to have a brand new experience of Catholic Mass. For me, it went from being something that was boring, it was a chore, and it wasn't something I really liked, and it turned itself into something where I'd receive nourishment, my character would grow, and I'd really get a lot out of Catholic Mass. It would really help me and sort me out for the week, and it had profound benefits on my character and on my life. And in order for you to take Catholic Mass from boring and something that's kind of irrelevant for you and turn it into something that really feeds your life and enriches and enhances the joy in life, and where you're engaged with Mass, you're really receiving the spiritual graces from what is going on, and you're open to that, then you need to go on a journey of perception. I remember when my journey first started, I was in university, or I was about to go to university, and my sister took me to this talk, and it was about the Catholic Mass and the meaning behind Mass. And obviously, I was just like, I like kind of academic things, so I'll go. I'm interested in talks. Anyway, I listened in, and it was like the third part of a six-part series. And there was a part in the Mass where it says, lift up your hearts to the Lord. And basically, the meaning behind it was that as you lift up your hearts, you're supposed to look up to the beautiful artwork on the ceiling of your church. And you're supposed to be spiritually elevated as you're going to go into the communion, like prayers for communion. And so that kind of blew my mind. Like when I started to look past all the kind of complex words I didn't really understand was about, and I started to see that there was meaning behind that. There was something behind that. Then that one experience in church, in Catholic Mass, actually changed. I started to get a lot of richness from that one part of Mass. And because I opened my mind up for that part of Mass, I started opening my mind up for other parts of Mass. And slowly, my mind began to change. And I started to get nourishment from Mass. You see, if your mind is open to getting nourishment, you can get a lot. And you're going to go with your family anyway. You're going to show up to Sunday. You might as well get a lot out of it and really let it go deep within you and nourish you. It's like eating a meal, a beautiful meal, but not nourishing it and not digesting it and not getting all the nutrients out of it. So we're gonna go a few things here. First thing, Mass is boring, right? Classic thing, we're not exactly clapping and, doing a concert or doing anything really entertaining. There's sometimes no dynamic speakers, like your parish priest might be a really boring chap. And, there's nothing wrong with, a Christian concert and an engaging speaker. But boring, um, that is such a countercultural emotion to throw yourself into, because here we are being absolutely stimulated, overstimulated, and over hooked up to our phones, to media, to everything that's going on around us. And here we are getting bored in Mass. But once a week, we show up and we face the boring. And what I want you to open your mind to, that it's possible that it is making you more powerful. Because when you look at the word boring, to bore is to put a hole through. And essentially you're putting a hole through all your thinking, all your overstimulation. So as you submit yourself to Mass, to church, your ego and all the things and your sins and your vices are going to come up. It's like this place where all the demons inside of you start arising, all this boredom. That's all just subconscious fear for what's about to happen in this holy celebration. So when you feel the boredom, allow it to come up. And as that boredom is cleared from you and your mind is open, and like a hole is open within your consciousness, you open up to a new level of power. You open up to a new level of peace. So the other part of this is peace. If you can get through the boredom, then you can find peace. And boring, like something that is boring is painful, but it's essentially good suffering. It's suffering that leads you to peace. And if you can sit with the boredom once a week and train as if you're training for strength, like you're going to go to the gym and you're going to work out and it's going to hurt. You're boring little micro tears in your muscles. So why not bore a micro tear in your ego, in the thing that resists life itself? So there you have Catholic Mass, and church has a burning quality to it. It will burn away the weaknesses of your mind. So when you're getting bored next time in Mass, you realize that you're actually getting stronger, like your weaknesses are being burnt away. Next thing here, it's actually weakening me. This is a big thing for me. I used to have this thought that, when I was doing the penitential act, which is I confess my sins, where you're confessing your sins essentially at the start of Mass. I've got my Mass booklet here anyway. I used to think that was actually making me weak, and that was stripping down my confidence. And I thought every time I humbled myself, this was kind of going against what I'd been taught in personal development. Personal development, you're taught to build your confidence up and say that you are good. But in church, here I am humbling myself, saying that I'm a sinner, saying that I'm weak. Well, you go along in life and you realize you are. And so Mass every single week is an opportunity to admit to yourself your weaknesses. It's to examine how you have failed throughout the week. It is like a beautiful opportunity for you to bring to God all these weaknesses within you and actually be humble about it. And when you become humble, you become fearless, right? So if you have an ego to protect or something that's so-called worldly strong, then you have something that you want to defend as well. And that's going to make you ultimately weak and fearful because you're always going to be protecting your ego. Going to Mass is an act of humility. It is an act of submission. It is an act of submission and surrender. It seems like weakness, but it's actually total strength. And the more that you humble yourself in this Mass setting, especially when you're doing the Psalms and you're calling out to God, it actually builds up your faith. And as your faith is built up and you become weaker, but your strength and reliance on God increases, then you become insanely fearless and insanely powerful in a funny way. Because someone who has faith is able to step out and take action and be courageous and be bold because they totally rely on God and they're totally dependent and put their confidence in God. And therefore they have something stable to be confident in. So anytime you feel like your ego is getting attacked, or you feel like you're being weakened, or you become like a weird servant or anything like that, just realize that the pathway to power isn't necessarily what you originally thought it is or what the world shows you it to be. It's actually to be a servant, to be weak in a way, to be meek, to be humble. Check out the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus takes all these worldly values and flips them on their head. And what you'll find that as you become more humble and more of a servant, your power and courage increases. But it doesn't look like it should, but it does. And this is something you might need to experiment and see for yourself in. The person who has no ego has nothing to defend themselves about. They have nothing to fear. And that is a powerful position to be in. And finally, people will find Mass irrelevant. Like these readings, these gospel readings, these kind of prayers, they don't mean anything to me, right? It's nothing about me. It's just about other things. And you see, when you are stuck in this irrelevancy thing, you're actually blocking your mind from hearing what God has to say to you. So it's like God's speaking to you, right? So the key here is actually listening for what God is trying to tell you in this Mass, in what is going on. And so you need to start finding a way to understanding what's going on in all parts of the Mass. For example, when I took communion as a kid, I didn't really think it was that relevant to me. Like I understood logically that it was important and it was a really important part of our faith. But essentially, I just thought I was, eating bread and it actually had no impact on me. Like, oh yeah, maybe God would pray for me a little bit. The way that I see it now, it is so perfectly relevant. When I'm receiving that bread, when I'm receiving communion, I'm receiving Jesus Christ. I'm being given God completely. And that my friends, will have an insane impact on your personality and who you are. As you study Jesus, as you spend time with Jesus in his house, and as you receive Jesus, you become more Christ-like. Ultimately, Christ is self-sacrificing. He is the ultimate hero. He's the hero of heroes. And by receiving Christ, you take on that personality a little bit more. You become more generous in your life. You become more of a servant. And you realize that every single part of Mass is perfectly relevant to you. It is serving you. It is creating you into a better character. It is guiding you. So when you go to Mass, you're getting heaps of guidance for your life. I wrote guidance there. I don't know if you can see that. Sorry, I'm not going to change the camera angles at this point. But essentially, Catholic Mass can be so rich. And the thing about this stuff is it doesn't just stop there. The deeper you go, the more nourishment you receive. So you're going to receive a lot of nourishment the more that you open your mind to how beautiful and amazing Catholic Mass can be. So go and face your fears, brothers and sisters. Show up to church. Feel the pain. Feel the suffering. That stuff is good for you. That stuff is really good for you. And eventually, over time, Mass can be this nourishment, this anchor in your life, and it can make you more powerful, more fearless. It can bring you more peace. You can listen to God in it, and it's going to give you heaps of guidance for how to live your life, where to go next. And ultimately, you are praying in a community. You're with people who are praying together with your prayers of the faithful, and we're connecting to God and developing a relationship with God as a community in a really beautiful way. So I wish you all the best. God bless you. Much love, and go to Mass.